is up, everybody? Welcome to Friday. Welcome to the Ham Radio Crash Course. I appreciate you checking us out. Let's catch up on some memes. I got some new ones in here. Oh, we're still in the early phases of them. I got to start moving them down. Appreciate you guys coming out, saying what's up, and watching the show. Today, we're going to actually be doing the slides that I didn't get to give for the Stone Mountain Ham Fest, which is basically I got asked to do a Skype show, and it was like schedules were tough on both sides, and it didn't end up working out, but that's okay. I'll do it online with you guys right now. Yeah. All right, enough of the theme song. Let's roll right over. How's it going, everybody? Again, welcome to the Ham Radio Crash Course. I appreciate you coming out. And as always, the Ham Radio Crash Course is all about building a community of amateur radio operators. And not just our community, but let's just make ham radio more inclusive. Let's help people get started in ham radio. When they have questions, answer them, even if you're also a newbie. Or maybe work on the answer together, right? There's your homework. Find somebody that needs a little help. Help them out. Maybe you don't know, and that's okay. You just try it together, and you'll come up with a solution. So, yeah, let's do that. I like that. That's good homework. Let's help each other out. Let's do more of that. So, what do we got in the chat? We got a lot of people in the chat so far. Oh, man, we're already up to 100 people watching. Thanks so much. Let's see. Best place to buy used ham gear, Joe Baxter says. I'd go online, but generally some of the best stuff you get from clubs. We'll be talking about that in the future, in the slides in a little bit. So some news items real quick. We're going to start off the news with something fun. So let me pull this up really quick. Got this video. Neil Rapp sent this over to me. So he's on Ham Talk Live, by the way, if you're not following him. He's got a cool little podcast. So here we go. Hopefully. Or not. It's not even playing. Let's try that again.
Welcome to the National Voice of America Museum of Broadcasting near Cincinnati, Ohio. The Voice of America Museum is the site for the first ever Youth on the Air camp in IARU Region 2. Young licensed amateur radio operators between the ages of 15 and 25 will have the chance to come here for a week of learning, operating, building, and fun. If you are a licensed ham between the ages of 15 and 25 in North, Central, or South America, we want you to apply to come to this camp, which will be held June 21st through 26th in 2020. Maybe you've just become a ham and don't know what's next, or maybe you're already an experienced ham but want to step up your game. Youth on the Air Camp will give you a chance to experience more. There will be workshops on contesting, kit building, direction finding, and satellite operation. We're even planning on having a contest at Kings Island Amusement Park and a high-altitude balloon launch. You'll have a chance to work our week-long special event station, W8Y, with some of the biggest and best rigs available. And best of all, you'll make friends and meet mentors that will last a lifetime. Thanks to the generous support of our sponsors, YOTA Camp is affordable. For more information and to apply, visit YOTARegion2.org, and if you'd like to donate to our cause, also go to YOTARegion2.org and click on the donate button.
Well, that was excellent. Hold on here for a second. There we go. All right, so that was cool. So I've got somebody here who's going to talk a little bit about it. We got Sterling in the house. What's up, Sterling?
What's up? Remember me?
Yeah, from not too long ago. Yeah, not too long ago.
Yeah.
Both online and in person. So thanks for coming out on the hike. You flew in. That's amazing.
Yeah.
We had a wonderful time. I know you guys had a little trials and tribulations with some luggage. Who was it? Was it you or Kyle who had the problem?
It was Kyle. So Kyle's bag got left in Dallas. We flew from Dallas to Burbank, and they just like the bag fell off the thing putting it into the plane, I guess, and they found it. We didn't have it on there, and I thought I lost mine too because they called out last bag and was nowhere to be found. Oh, mine was nowhere to be found, but I turned on my tile, like I have a little tile on my keys that I put in my bag, and it was like, oh, it's nearby, and I could hear it ringing, and somebody walked out of a room with my bag and not Kyle's. And then the next day we were like, and they told us there, like, it wouldn't come till 1 p.m. And we were like, well, crap, that's like most of the day. But then we waited, called a bunch of times. We waited, and the next morning about 8 a.m. they said, hey, your bag's on the way from Phoenix, because they flew it the first flight out of Dallas to Phoenix, and Phoenix to Burbank, and then got it, trucked up the mountain as quick as we could, and I think we were up there about 30 minutes after you guys summited. So
pretty much, yeah, you were right behind us.
It all just fell into place, and it was so fun.
That's excellent. So you're talking about YOTA camp, is that what we're calling it? Or okay, YOTA camp.
YOTA, they call it Youngsters on the Air in Region 1, IRU Region 1, like we kind of separate it through the IRU regions.
Mm-hmm.
And in the U.S., to kind of separate it but keep the same, obviously, idea, we call it Youth on the Air, because youngsters is the thing that they kind of use their parlance in Europe, and then over here we call young people youth rather than youngsters, if that makes any sense. So
sure, yeah.
But basically it was a thing that, well, they started it over in the Region 1, IRU Region 1, like in Europe, I think in 2007, 2008, almost 10 years ago. And it started out as just a gaggle of young people, young hams, and then kind of grew from there. They started this thing, camp, the YOTA camp, and it's like a week long. I think before it was maybe a few days, a weekend or so, and it grew as well.
Right.
I think a week long, just summer camp for young people to come in and learn ham radio things. So like you heard in there, lots of activities, lots of workshops, lots of learning, and then I had in 2016 the chance to go to YOTA camp in Austria, because YASME, which is a kind of a ham radio foundation that gives out like grants and donations and such. They saw the merit and the value in this like large group of hams that are all getting super inspired, and they were like, we need to send over some fact finders. So we were on a fact finding mission, and we had so much fun there. Probably one of my life's greatest experiences, just because it was one of my first like big international trips. We got to do hiking, ISS contact. I don't think we did a balloon launch, but we went to a ice cave.
Cool.
And we took our radios through an ice cave, which was like just amazing. We saw a castle. We took our radios there and had like a little mini, like a sprint. And so we're going to kind of we're copying that idea and pasting it over here in the U.S. to bring the young hams of the Americas, so Canada, U.S., Mexico, Central, South America, to do the same thing. So Voice of America Museum is the venue, and Cincinnati is kind of like the area. So we're going to Kings Island for our fun trip, which is an amusement park, and we're allowed to bring in HTs, which
Great.
is really cool. And
you're going to bring your QRP radio and see if you can get away with running HF from the park?
That's a good idea. I mean, they said radios are fine, so I'm sure they'll let me.
We're going to test the limits on that one.
Yeah. I hope they don't regret it. And there's a funny story about the hotel, too. It's really close to the Voice of America Museum.
Great.
They were going to have like a special event station in one of the rooms, or one of the like forum rooms or meeting rooms, or maybe even one of the hotel rooms. But we thought, oh no, that's going to be a big problem, because they're going to have wires and power cables and coax and antennas. But it turns out they're well aware of like how to deal with that, because they had the Secret Service come in whenever the vice president or president visited Cincinnati, and that's where the Secret Service stayed. And so they had holes drilled into walls, cables running all over the place.
Wow.
So it was like, oh, perfect.
That's awesome. So that's going to make it really easy to get things going. So you mentioned something on the trail. I don't know if you can mention it. You've got some potentially new radios that people are going to be able to go hands-on with. Can you mention what they are?
They are the biggest and bestest and newest ham radios that you can imagine. Let's put it that way.
Okay. We can't say what it is, right?
We're also sponsored by ICOM.
So okay.
You can
maybe you can put two and together. Maybe you can. All right. Well, very good. Anything you want to mention as far as logistics go? We've got the website. I'll make sure to post it in the description. I'll give myself a note. Yeah. Anything else you want to mention?
So yeah, the website, all the information that we have right now is it's preliminary information. So the sign-ups aren't open yet. But there is, you can sign up for information as we get it, and starting February we'll actually open them up and have like all of the nitty-gritty details of everything. But the majority of it's there. Campers are responsible for bringing themselves to Cincinnati, and then from that point we'll shuttle them on. There's a cost of $100 per camper, but we'll have scholarships for those with financial hardships.
Okay.
And one of the things that I noticed that they in the IRA Region 1 YOTA, the European YOTA, European African YOTA, is that a lot of the member societies or radio clubs of those areas will send like a troop of their best and brightest young hams, and they'll sponsor those and travel over there is a lot cheaper as well. Over here you probably have to fly, but over there they had trains, which is relatively cheap, but still they even flew people from Africa and the Middle East, which was an airplane trip. But besides that, I think all the information's up there. Hopefully that gave it a pretty good idea of what's going on. The ham-yota.org site is the European version. They have all the history, like years and years of history, all the video, all of the publications that they had there to kind of get a good idea. I think we're doing 20 campers this year, and if we get enough on our GoFundMe, we have our donation campaign, we can possibly move that up to 30. So.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Very good. And so it's 25 is the upper limit on age?
I think so, but I think the age is like plus or minus, give or take. Like, well, if say we're going to compete against a 27-year-old and a 25-year-old, we'll give precedence to the younger, obviously.
Okay.
If we have like a billion applications, that's kind of what we'll have to figure out.
Okay, very good. Well, I appreciate you hopping on and explaining it. I'll make sure I post the link so everybody can check that out. Obviously, because you have a slot for 20 people, space might be limited, so we want to make sure if you're interested, if you're watching us right now, make sure you bookmark that website and get the notifications turned on so you can find out when they're going to take applications.
Yep, sounds perfect. And I'll be in the chat here. I know you got a busy show, so if anybody's got any questions, feel free to ask or email any of the things you can see or you'll find in the website.
Okay, I appreciate you hopping on, Sterling, as always, and thanks again for coming out on the trip. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was tons of fun. Can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much. Take it easy.
Thank you. See ya.
All right. Well, that was great. All right. That was Sterling. Thank you, Sterling, for hopping on. And I got a super chat there in the middle. I appreciate it. I'll go back and look at it. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. So really quick. Oh, somebody asked what brew I'm drinking. Oh, some of you are going to love this. We just had some White Claws left in the refrigerator. So I'm drinking White Claws. This is the black cherry one. So commence with the White Claw love in the stream. I know you guys love the claws. So cheers. All right. So a couple of other news items. This weekend is the ARRL sweepstakes contest, single sideband sweepstakes. So if you're interested in a single sideband or just seeing the bands alive, the HF bands aren't dead, as we like to say, just turn the radio on tomorrow, or actually I think it starts in a couple hours here, or morning. But anyway, turn on the radio on HF if you only have an SDR, or use a web SDR, and you will be shocked at what you're going to hear. So make sure to turn that on. If you're interested, get involved there too. I'll post the link in the description for the ARRL sweepstakes for those of you that will be interested. And you can check out my video that I did on explaining contesting or getting started in contesting. And we also had Rhea on an interview, and she's a pretty active contester as well as an ARRL Hudson Division Director. So that was a lot of fun as well. So I'll post links to all that. Thanks on that one. James Hannibal's still doing the Quirky QRP giveaway, $5 discount. Well, I'm sorry. Let me take that back. He's doing a $5 discount if you use Quirky QRP HRCC, all one word, at checkout, $5 discount, which is awesome. Now, I'm close to 73,000, and I'll say this right up front, because next Friday, I'm going to post a whole bunch of contests starting basically tomorrow on the Discord. So if you join the Discord down below, you'll be able to get in on all the contests, in addition to the Shegu G90, which we're still giving away, which will be given away on the stream next week. So next week's stream, I've got a fun show planned. We're going to do all the giveaways. I've got some special swag from Icon that I'm going to give away. I've got some Abri antennas, and we've got some Slink antennas as well to give away, in addition to the G90. So pass it around. Let your friends know. We're going to have a ton of prizes. So I really appreciate everybody, and thank you for watching. So yeah, if you could share the link, share the playlist for getting started on ham radio, or if you're new to ham radio, that would be awesome. The kids are losing their mind in the background. I don't know what happened. Sean Haley, Hello from Delaware, just past Tech and General. Wow, congratulations. That's awesome. Also, big shout out to Zach Van, one of our admins. He's in the chat right now. Zach just passed his general, so give Zach a congratulations. That's awesome. Congratulations, Zach. Okay, we have got a lot of slides to get through, so I'm going to get started on those right now. All right, so what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about getting rid of that download bar. That's the first thing. Okay, so this was the talk that I was going to give at Stone Mountain Ham Fest. So some of it's going to be kind of high level, but I think that's going to be okay. If you're watching this and you're interested in starting out in ham radio, this would be kind of a good place to start. And I'm going to just explain a little bit about myself, too. So the first thing is, if you got your license, congratulations. Big thing. You know, if you're watching this, seeing me for the first time, congratulations on getting your license. Or if you're planning on getting it, congratulations on getting started, because that's all it takes to get started. So I am KI6NAZ. My name is Josh Nass. You can look me up on the FCC database or QRZ.com. I was licensed in 2007, and I'm currently a general, and I am semi-actively studying to get my extra. I got introduced to ham radio in Boy Scouts. There was a scoutmaster who had a Kenwood HT, and he brought it out at a camp out and started playing around with it. I was like, what are you doing? And he said, oh, I'm talking on a repeater. Never even heard of this stuff before. So that was the first exposure to it I had. I was like, that's pretty cool. I'm going to put that away somewhere. He wasn't really that active, and we didn't spend much time doing like the merit badges for radio, but that was the start. Then later, Richard, KE4GNK, I started working at Boeing, and he was kind of like my first real ham radio Elmer, and he really pushed me to get my technician. He took me to the Anaheim HRO, where I met Billy Bob, and that's kind of how this whole thing got started. And from that point, my interest started in VHF, UHF, because my area of work was also in that area, software-defined radios in particular. So that's kind of what got the ball rolling, if you will. There we go. So then in 2018, last year, I kind of pivoted my YouTube channel to the Ham Radio Crash Course, which is what you're watching now. And the goal of the Ham Radio Crash Course is to create a comfortable environment to better learn amateur radio through experimentation. I'm a big avid fan of treating amateur radio as it's meant to be treated, as a hobby, as a form of experimentation to learn the technology better, to learn the principles and the science behind it. Of course, do it in a safe way. We advocate safety as well as experimentation. You can have both, right? Now, we're on Facebook and Discord. If you didn't know that, the links are in the description. By the way, if you're watching this and you just want to have more ham radio fun after, we do an after chat on the Discord. You just join from the link below, click on the live stream area. There's a live stream chat and a live stream voice, and we'll be talking live, taking questions, doing whatever. Tonight, I'm actually going to be working on my KX2 and a Raspberry Pi. So that will be my project after the stream. So stay tuned for that. So how I started out in radio, if you go back before I was even exposed to ham radio, I had shortwave radios. These are the shortwave radios that I use now. That's a PL660 made by Texsun, available on Amazon, and a C-Crane Skywave single sideband, which is my current kind of daily driver receiver. So small and has so many features. I absolutely love it. I did a review on that. My primary interest was trying to pull in as many stations as I could from as far off as possible, right? Putting a big long wire up and just seeing what I could pull in, seeing what I could hear, what was out there. I found that fascinating. And from that, I learned the day-night cycle, what bands are good in the daytime, what bands are good in the nighttime. And once you kind of learn that, it kind of translates directly into amateur radio. Make sure I've got the chat up here so I don't lose any comments. Man, the chat's flying. Whew. Again, thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. So after I got licensed, I went to HRO, as I mentioned, and the first radio I picked up was the FT60R, purchased from Billy Bob, who still works there. He is KB7CIA and has been on a couple of my videos. And I still use the FT60, and I still totally recommend it to people as a great starting out radio. It has a very good front end, meaning its ability to receive is good. It doesn't get washed out by local local noise like other radios. Like if you had a Baofeng and an FT60 right next to each other, the FT60 will just still be able to receive even if the Baofeng is kind of nearby on an adjacent frequency. Whereas if it was the other way around, the Baofeng can't hang. So yeah. And then after I got the FT60, played around with it for a while, got it in my car with an antenna, I found out about APRS. And APRS, Automatic Packet Reporting System, basically allows you to provide your location, your heading, your elevation, some other details, as well as send messages between different amateur radio stations. And I was just like, man, I was hooked at that point. I was like, this is so awesome. It's one-to-one communication. I own the communication. I own the devices. I'm transmitting that information to another station. I was like, oh, this is it. So I started with that Kenwood THD72. I went with that one because I could connect it to my laptop or radio. Hey, we got Eric in the house and K8 MRD Stuff. Say hi to them as well. Thanks for hopping on, guys. That's a great radio because it connects directly to a computer, and you can use the built-in TNC to interface directly to APRS software, and you can send messages. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with it. And the D74, which is the new one, works the same way. Both very good radios. So APRS, right, it's kind of a stepping stone. APRS led me to SOTA. I heard about SOTA. I heard about people using APRS on SOTA activations, and I was like, what's this SOTA thing? So I started checking it out, and I found out you can do SOTA activations via VHF, UHF radios, but I was like, oh man, what's this HF stuff all about? And then that led me into HF, which is currently where my love is, but man, there's something romantic, and I will use the word romantic in ham radio. I know that's kind of weird, but there's something romantic about just dragging out a little box, right? A little radio box and a thin little wire antenna, getting it up in the air, and just being able to make contacts. I hope you got some of that feeling in that SOTA video that I did, because man, the smiles that I saw, the excitement of people who came out on the hike and stayed for the camp out was amazing. I just want to repeat, everybody activated that wanted to. It was fantastic. And we activated on multiple bands. Sterling, who was just on here, he activated on 80 meters, which I've never seen that before on a SOTA activation. Fantastic. So there's just something I love about just a little bag. You know, I've got my little bag right here, my Elecraft bag with a radio and everything you need inside of it, and being able to work HF and talk to people across the country. Fantastic. But anyway, with that said, so looking back, I feel that my path through radio has been pretty non-standard. There's a lot of things that I did, I'd say the hard way, or paths I went down that were the hard way path. So, you know, keep that in mind. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So ham radio is not a marathon. Or sorry, it is a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? So the process of ham radio is something you will adapt and learn as you grow and as you become interested in things. So it's not a race. And in fact, sometimes racing to get gear or to get somewhere with amateur radio can lead to mistakes, you know, not disastrous mistakes, but mistakes potentially to your wallet, for example, that you might not have experienced if you just take a little bit more time, do a little bit more research, learn a little bit more. So if I had to start all over again, and kind of this is where the rest of this talk is going to go, is what would I do differently? And I'll break these all down, but I would find a club and an Elmer first, right, if you can. Of course, keep learning, keep reading online, that kind of good stuff. Now, this one is subjective. It's applicable to me, but, you know, you may be different. Set a budget or a plan, and the plan is like really the important part, and your significant others will love it if you have a budget. And I've found that has been helpful. So if I set a plan for what I want to achieve and what I want to be proficient in, that seems to work out really well. So I would recommend picking up an HT or two. Maybe not go HT buck wild, but just get a couple of them that are good, right? High quality in the case of maybe your second one. Consider getting a mobile VHF, UHF radio in the shack or your auto, your car. And I will definitely go into that to some level. Then, of course, studying for your general and extra. And I will go into reasons why you should. And I think it is of high value. So keep watching. and then start researching for HF radios. So this is all supposed to be fun, right? That's the goal of ham radio. That's why we do it is a lot of fun. If you're not having fun, maybe the thing you're focusing on is maybe not something that you are super passionate about, no big deal. You can learn about something new or experience a different thing in ham radio, and it'll pick your interest back up like I did with APRS, or like I am right now with HF. Somebody asked, what is an HT? An HT is a handy talkie. And that is, and sometimes, I appreciate you for calling it out. Sometimes I use acronyms and I shouldn't. An HT is this guy. It's a handy talkie, a walkie-talkie, right? That's kind of what they call it. So thank you for pointing that out. I will try to explain those acronyms and those crazy terms us hams use. So first thing, finding an Elmer, right? Getting an Elmer is like the fast track of knowledge, of information dump. Like, you can get a ton of information from different people, different Elmers, and they're not all going to be like the best Elmer for all of amateur radio. They're going to be good at particular things, and they likely have the ability to explain how other things work that they may not be experts in, and that's great. So there's no reason to have just like one Elmer. And an Elmer doesn't have to be like this stoic, sage-like individual you go talk to. It could just be a friend of yours who knows a little bit more about putting a mobile radio in a car, for example. How do I straighten out the SWR of this antenna? Stuff like that. And SWR is a standing wave ratio. It is basically the match, how we match the antenna to the radio. You got to have an SWR that is close to matching the feed point impedance of the radio, or else you won't be able to get that energy out of the antenna. So sometimes you don't physically need to be with them either, right? We have all kinds of Elmers that I call Elmers that write books that I've read, that make videos. Some of them are in this chat right now. So all that stuff counts, and that's a really good way to learn about amateur radio, is find an Elmer, and they can be lots of different things, but you're looking for somebody that you can kind of bounce questions off of. That's really what helps, is they'll know a lot, and you've got to get your brain right to ask the right questions, or you have questions that you got to get the answer to first before you can kind of like move on to the next thing. So having somebody that you can kind of bounce ideas off of is really helpful. That's why our Discord is so great, because there's so many people that are so helpful there and will help you if you have those questions. So finding a club is kind of like the easiest place to find an Elmer. And also, because it's full of ham radio people, you're going to have all kinds of stuff to talk about. Hey, Bob, Blitheract sends a upside down smiley face emoji. I love that. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I don't know if that's going to show up in the chat, but I definitely see it on the YouTube side. So thanks for that. I appreciate it. Joining a club, though, at the larger level, right? A club generally will have, a meeting where there's a talk. There'll be days for you to come to their shack and use their equipment. They'll have field day outings. They'll have fun events outside, activating QRP or activating mobile radios, stuff like that. All of that is great because it kind of like cuts down on the barrier to entry, both the knowledge and the cost and the time that you would spend working on it. It really reduces it. So that's why joining a club is so good and so valuable. Highly recommended joining a club. Close the door, please. Close the door, please. My son's walking around. How do you find a club? Well, a couple things. ARRL affiliated clubs and search engine is one of the easiest ways to find it. You can search on ARRL, the ARRL website. If you just Google ARRL, find a club, this website on the left will pop up. And I want to make a note here specifically. If you go to the zip code area and you type in your zip code and you say within a certain miles, blank out all this other stuff. Do this before you click search, otherwise you won't get any feedback. So that's the first thing you got to do. Make sure you do that. Otherwise, it'll say like nothing in your area. So make sure you just put in the zip code, just put in the radius around you or the distance around you, and that'll give you the best results. And for example, I picked on the Anaheim Amateur Radio Association, and that is the information there. What? Oh, I just freaked out. I saw 599 and I freaked out. But then he said Manila. I figured it out. It's from the Philippines. I don't know what that is in dollars, but I am super thankful. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I had to pause for a second. 12. Okay, great. Thank you, buddy. Thank you very much. I wonder if YouTube can just send me the money that is the Filipino money. I don't know what it's called, and I can just have it. That would be fun. So the Anaheim Amateur Radio Association, they give you all kinds of information here, like the meeting time, 4th Tuesday monthly, 7 p.m., where it is. It's in Orangewood Avenue on Anaheim. This is actually the Fire Training Center. I've been to this one. It's pretty cool. And then they got their website, club members, gives you all kinds of different information, and then the officer, so you can contact them directly. That is super helpful. Now, when I got my general, I wasn't in a club. I kind of just ran myself through it. I learned online. I did videos, or I watched videos and read reports, read the ARRL QST magazine. But I spent time at events. I spent time with not a lot of places that I could bounce information off of people. Hold on, Ben, I'm on the show. Close the door, please. Close the door, please. Close it all the way. All the way. All the way. God. He keeps coming in and out and distracting me. Sorry about that. So going to ham radio events is great, but if you're not in a club, I've found generally hard to get like a lot of information just at one event. So by joining the club, you can get a lot of information by bouncing things off of you. You go to the meetings, you have a lot of fun, and it's a safe place to learn because they're going to keep you safe as far as following the things that you should and shouldn't do. So you get the idea. I myself, and I say that in the bottom there, I found that I did more mistakes. Like when I got one of my first radios for HF, I didn't really understand how NFEDs work. Particularly the 9-to-1 NFED or random wire antenna. I had a bunch of problems with that, and I spent like a while trying to figure it out, and it took me a good deal of time. Versus if I had a club or somebody that I could contact, I would have had no problem. I would have been off and running immediately. Barry Miller says, keep up the great work. Great videos. NJ3X. Thank you. I appreciate the support. So if you are like me, like I just showed you a couple slides ago, there's no reason to join like one club if you live in an area like me. There are multiple clubs all over, and you can try before you buy. You can go to different clubs, go to their meetings, check out what they've got going on. Maybe go to a couple meetings. Decide if, they're doing the things, they vibe the way you vibe, then join them if you like it. If you don't worry about it. No big deal. I will say this, though. If you go to a club and you have a bad experience, and I get messages a lot from people that have bad experiences. If you have a bad experience at a club, don't join them. That's fine. But give them a second thought, maybe 6 months, a year later. Go back and see what it's like. Are they still the same way? Are they doing things the way you didn't like before? Maybe it was just a talk you didn't really like or you weren't into, or something going on that didn't work with you. But try them again. I'll say that, because I do get a lot of messages. Maybe people only reach out to me when they have a problem. I don't know that I get a lot of messages from people saying, I love my club. My club is great. End of message. Have a good day. I get a lot of like, hey, I had a bad time at this club. They made me feel bad about FT8 or my interest in digital. So keep that in mind. Zach says, for anyone in the Orlando area, I recommend the Disney Radio Club. There you go. Check them out if you're in the Orlando area. So if you don't have a club, if you don't have an area you can go to find people that you can bounce questions off of, you still have online sources. And man, this has gotten better in the last 5 or so years. But clubs like W2LCW, the Long Island CW Club, they're almost entirely online. They do all of their meetings on Zoom. They post the slides on Zoom. They have cameras where they can display what's going on their desk, kind of like I do. Awesome. That's kind of where I see a lot of clubs going. They'll have a brick and mortar type of club, but then they'll also do a lot more online content. That is just the way it all goes, right? As technology advances, as the internet becomes more of everything all around us, that's kind of how it's going to go. So you're going to see more of that, I think. And if so, you find one you like, join them. Clubs are usually really inexpensive to join. Long Island CW Club, for instance, is $35 for the whole year. And that's great. They do a lot of great CW classes and a lot of good talks. And then you've got hundreds, possibly thousands, and it's probably well into the tens of thousands maybe, of YouTube videos on ham radio or ham radio adjacent content. Now, you don't get maybe the same type of question feedback like you would, but you can get a lot of information, and it helps because you're seeing it. You're seeing it live. You're seeing people manipulate, particularly something they're interested in. So, great time to be alive, as I say in ham radio, and YouTube and these online communities are definitely a part of it. And then lots of online groups. Facebook, groups.io, and of course Discord. I think Discord is possibly one of the best at this because it's immediate. You get immediate response. And our Discord happens to be pretty big, but it's fantastic. Anyone posts a question almost immediately, unless it's like super late at night, gets immediate responses. And that's a screenshot from our Discord. It was Connor, actually, who was giving me a hard time about using his content on the air, said he might sue me. He was kidding. But that, for instance, is activity on the band that he was showing. He's like, hey, guys, the bands are blowing up. Check it out. Stuff like that, right? Just online community is amazing. And Zach posted the link to our Discord, so thank you for that. Now, here's the thing about setting the budget, and I'll keep this quick. I think it's a good idea when starting out to kind of start small, and then as your brain parts grow with the information, you can start building up. Now, this is just me talking. This is just my recommendation. People learn at different rates. I myself feel like I took a lot longer to kind of get up to speed, and then I got real passionate about it and it took off. But up front, there's not a lot of reason you need to go buck wild and go buy, spend thousands of dollars, that kind of stuff. Start small. Get yourself an HT, possibly a mobile VHF UHF radio and a decent antenna for it, and kind of fully explore it. Get on some nets, work some simplex VHF UHF. Heck, even try maybe doing a SOTA activation. But kind of have a goal in mind. Like, say, I really just want to have a radio that I can hit like every repeater in my area. Call it like a 50-mile radius or something like that. That's a good goal. And you don't have to spend a lot to meet that, right? You have a mobile radio, and a mobile radio is like a, car mount-sized radio. You can use it in the house or in your car, and start there. Put up an antenna and get kind of that stuff going on. Meet that goal, and then start to branch out. For me, I was like really into APRS, so I went straight into a D72, which is like a $400 radio at the time. And I kind of learned quickly that I was like, oh man, I'm going to plug this into my computer and bang, it's just going to work right out of the box. Not so much. Ham radio software, it can be fiddly, and APRS software in particular is very fiddly. So, you'll spend a lot of time bashing your head against the wall in some cases. Also a good reason to join a club or join one of these online communities because they can help you out. But set a budget and try and stick to it. Really a goal. So ham radio technology is amazing. It is the best it's ever been. It's only going to get better as companies start to leverage, phone type technology into HTs, as we leverage SDR technologies into base station HF radios, high frequency radios, and QRP, which is low power portable stations. There's already a couple of QRP radios out there that are SDRs, like the Elecraft KX2, for instance. But the technology is amazing. It keeps getting better. So it's a great time to be a ham. It's a great time to be alive in ham radio, as I like to say. So keep that in mind. I will mention this. So this is kind of a thought to think of. God, maybe 90s, before the 90s, like people still are very brand loyal to particular ham radio brands for whatever reason. They liked the way that the interface was on this radio, or they thought the quality was better on these radios, etc., etc. Now, I generally say that retail radios, both handy talkies and mobiles and HF radios are like the best they've ever been as far as quality goes. Your money goes a long way. You get really good quality radios, and they're all relatively in the same space as far as quality and performance. There are little nuances of difference, like some radios are going to have an interface that you like better, like they're known for having more knobs on the face. This other radio is known for having a big old screen, but those controls are sometimes in that screen. You got to click around a little bit. That's going to appeal to some people, but guess what? Those radios generally perform kind of at the same benchmark. And a lot of the time when we do reviews and we say, oh, this radio is better than the other, even the one we're saying is not as good as the other radio is still a good radio. That's the thing that everybody needs to keep in mind when they watch videos like the ones I post and others. So great time to be alive. Ham radios are amazing, and the technology keeps getting better. So for buying an HT or mobile VHF radio, generally I tell people, find out what your local activity is like. How many repeaters are in your area? Are they analog repeaters? Are they digital repeaters? I realize I have this on. I don't need it. My ears are getting warm. Are they digital repeaters? What kind of digital? Is it DMR? Is it Yaesu System Fusion? Is it D-Star? Whatever. And there's all kinds of things I'll show you here shortly, a website you can go to find that out. But start with that, right? So if you're like me, I live in an area where I'm just surrounded by repeaters. So I could pick any radio I want. It comes down to just feel for me. Touch and feel, cost, features. That's what I pick. I can go to any one of them. But if repeaters are scarce, then you may not want to start with an HT. You might want to start with a mobile VHF UHF radio in your car, your truck, or at home so that you can work simplex. Mobile radios are generally 50 watt output versus handy talkies that are like 4 or 5 or up to 8 now. But those radios aren't going to work as great as a mobile radio will for simplex. And by simplex, I mean point to point, walkie-talkie type talking. Got to catch up on some super chats. Chris C, no matter the band where the competitors had. No matter the brand where the competitors had. I agree. I love doing that. Logic 4, what's the craziest thing you've heard on the ham radio, police radio, EMS radio? Go check out my live stream that I did for Halloween. The scariest thing you heard on the radio. There was a lot of people that called in and said what they think. I think it's like the Russian buzzer is probably the thing that's the weirdest. And Bob Blitheract says, Yaesu rocks, go Leptons, FT60 and FT891R. So, Yaesu fan, right? You don't have to be, though. It's kind of like picking a brand of cigarettes, at least. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't say that. It's not for the kids, but you get the idea. And so if you're a techie type person, just to kind of round this out, if you're looking at an HT or a mobile radio, if you're a techie type person, some people that are technology focused can go straight into digital radios like DMR, Yaesu System Fusion, or D-Star. I did a review of this Anytone, and 878, right? Yeah. And I think this is a great beginner DMR radio. It is analog and digital, and it is easy to program for a DMR radio. It's still a bit headachy, but you can program it on the screen, which is kind of rare for DMRs. So you can skip to that if you want to, but you're going to need a local repeater or you're going to need a hotspot. Here is my area where I live. I'm like right here, right here in the middle. Those are all the repeaters in my area. Okay, so they're just everywhere. There's even 2 on this island. The Avalon repeater is the one we use for Catalina Island. Man, a lot of repeaters. So finding repeaters. I'll post the link in the description. Also, for you watching, if you want these slides, I'll post them over to Patreon. It'll be a public post, so you can check that out. Many references online. I like repeaterbook.com. It also happens to interface with Chirp, which is the software that a lot of people use to program mostly Chinese radios, but they work with other radios too now. And you can program those, put them right in your phone or right in your HT with the right USB cable. And then for those that are interested in doing simplex, The calling frequencies that we primarily use are 146.520 megahertz. Now, special note here, 146.520 is probably the most active of the simplex calling frequencies. The next would be 446.000 megahertz, and the least active is 223.500. And we just don't use that band as much anymore. So, not to say that it's not active, it's just not active in my area. Maybe your area is different, but so yeah, the 2 meter 146.520 is the simplex frequency I like to leave on my radio most of the time. So buying your first HT. So most people start buying an HT, right? They get their license, they run to the store, they run online. For instance, this is the HRO website that I've got a picture of this Yaesu FT4XR that I did talk on a deep dive on all the Yaesu HTs, so you can check that out if you're interested. That is a pretty good price for a radio, $75 for a dual band, so 2 meter, 70 centimeter band radio. When I started out, radios to start with, HTs, were $200 and up, like very expensive. And they didn't have lithium-ion batteries. They didn't have the wealth of features that they have today. But man, things have come down a lot. It's easy to get a well-made HT for well under $200. $100 is not a bad price point. So yeah. Keep that in mind. Caution, though. So what did somebody say? What FT3 is at $500? Yeah. An FT3 Yaesu HT, I don't think it's $500. It's less than that. But that would be a higher-end handy-talkie, right? It has a lot of features in it, like GPS, Bluetooth. It does APRS. All that fun stuff. I'm talking about your first HT. Matt. Yeah, so Wouxun KG UV8E. Better than the BF, and he's referring to a Baofeng. I think so. Generally, I like that company, Wouxun, however you want to pronounce it. I don't do a good pronunciation of Chinese words. So not all not all HTs at the bargain basement level are of exceptional quality. There are some exceptions, but a lot of them create kind of what they call spurious emissions. So if I'm keyed up on, call it the simplex frequency, 1.6.520, and I key up and I start talking, there's a harmonic, a second and third harmonic that come off of the radio, and they're oftentimes higher than the noise threshold that they're supposed to be or what the FCC requires. A lot of the reason for that is because they're from China. China has less stringent rules in that area, so they get shipped over here. That upsets a lot of amateur radio operators. So if you get a hard time from anybody about operating your Baofeng or whatever, that's where it's coming from. I like to use eHam online or eham.net for reviews, and I tend to think that their reviews are of interesting quality because you get a lot of different people commenting. So if you get a radio that has really mixed reviews, go in there and make sure you look at it, because it is likely that you've got some fanboyism going on, some brand loyalty, whatever, or, maybe they're pushing for a radio or against a radio they don't like. So make sure you read into the reviews a lot. So here's my note on Baofengs. If you've seen my face and you typed in ham radio or Baofeng, that's probably where you saw me from. I would say that probably most Baofengs, particularly the older ones suffered with this, creates this harmonic problem. They have poor filtering. And so that's what kind of makes hams angry, like I said. The qualities has improved, but generally, Baofengs, not the greatest quality radio. Are they acceptable quality for $25? I'd say so. That's up to you, for you to decide. But they don't have a lot of features to them. They don't do a lot other than transmit in areas they probably shouldn't. And they sound okay, but not nearly as good as some of the Japanese radios. That Yaesu included is going to sound a lot better. I will say this, though. Don't stop with just ordering a Baofeng and then, I'm done. I'm going to go order a dozen of these, and my ham radio career is done and through. I wouldn't say do that. I'd say research a little bit more, learn a little bit more about different radios, and then, think about picking up some different HTs other than just a Baofeng. And then the last point, and here's the big one. If you wouldn't have become a ham if it wasn't for the price point of the Baofeng, then don't feel bad about it. The whole community, ham radio in general, is better for having you with a Baofeng than not be a ham at all. So don't let anybody, make you feel bad about having a Baofeng. At the same time, there's nothing wrong with thinking about potentially upgrading from a Baofeng in the future. Those are my thoughts. And lastly on HTs, I think this is my last one. If you have a budget for it, you should consider APRS. These are expensive radios, I get that, but for me, getting outdoors, having APRS is like an extra layer of just kind of safety ability. I can get more information out there, like where I'm heading, without having to constantly check in. They work when I'm in an area where there's no phone service or mobile phone service. The models really quickly that support APRS, again, automatic positioning system basically for radio. People can see where you're at any one time. FT3DR, FT2DR. FT2DRs, you can get them inexpensively now, used. Kenwood D74, D72, also those D72s are a great deal these days because they're used and they're still retail, and they're trying to reduce the price on them. So I will say, though, that the Kenwoods are not the most robust for outdoor type stuff I've found. They're a bit more of a shack queen to me, or something mobile, working from your car, or having a laptop connected to it. So yeah. And then two good recommendations that are out of production: the FT1DR and the VX6R, both made by Yaesu. The VX6R gets the nod, I'd say, if you can get one at a good price, because it's kind of the Swiss Army radio. It does so much stuff. It's the VX8DR, not the VX6. Okay, there you go. Oh, right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Ethan corrected me. I'll have to fix that on the slides later. Buying a mobile radio. So again, this is the one you put in your car or on the desk in your shack. I recommend getting one, particularly one that you can put in your shack and have an antenna on the roof. Get one of those nice ground plane antennas, 5 feet and above. They work great, and they're going to work better than just like a mobile car installation, like a whip. I've found they do wonderfully. And 550 watts is generally the standard. That lets you do really decent communication. I've been able to talk over 100 miles on, obviously, FM on a mobile radio, all the way down to San Diego. Kind of just ran down the coastline and worked them. Sounded great. It was almost full quieting. And full quieting means there's no background noise. It sounds like he's just on a phone with you or in the next room sitting next to you. That's what full quieting means. And, of course, the reason why I like mobiles is they will work with simplex very well. Now, as you move to mobile radios, that's where you're going to see the first kind of price bump. You're going to see the cost go up for these type of radios because they have more features, they have more power, they're larger, there's more material in it, different quality material and specs, all kinds of stuff. But you see they're generally more expensive. So keep that in mind. However, very inexpensive to find on the used market. Very, very inexpensive. The requirements that I have, something that I learned over time, is make sure it's a dual receiver, meaning it can receive 2 independent channels simultaneously. 2 meter, 2 meter, 70 centimeter, 70, or 2 meter 70, whatever it is, make sure it's dual receive. That is the one thing I'd recommend. I'm not a big fan of mono band, single receiver mobile radios for a multitude of reasons, but I like the tactical information, if you will, being able to monitor simplex and being able to monitor whatever's going on my favorite repeater or work APRS. So those are great. Keep that in mind. All right. So going down our agenda, kind of continuing studying into getting your general and your extra and really kind of exploring HF. I kind of went nuts when I got into HF. That is where kind of everything started to change for me. When I was introduced to SOTA and kind of introduced to HF, things just kind of really started to blow up. Now, these are longer distance contacts, right? These are contacts from my house. I'm able to talk across the country, or, you know, to Japan is easier for me because I'm in Southern California. But that's when you ever hear someone say, hey, I worked the world with this radio, or I was on 10 meters and I worked the world. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about HF, high frequency radio communication. 2 stations just communicating through the air via an antenna. For me, I think you get the most enjoyment out of amateur radio if you get started, get used to, get your feet wet on the repeaters, all that stuff. But keep, you know, pulling out those books and studying general, and keep watching the videos and learning a little bit more and more about HF. I've said it in a lot of videos that technicians' privileges that they have now are kind of limited on HF. You only get a portion of 10 meters, which is a daytime band primarily, and everything else is CW, which is Morse code. If that's kind of difficult to get started with, so keep that in mind. You should generally want to progress to general. And getting your general or extra is more easy than it's ever been. Case in point, this is hamstudy.org on the left. This is the book that one of the books I'm reading right now for extra, the No Nonsense Extra Class study book that Matt sent me. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. Great book. I would recommend them wholeheartedly. And I have my video series on getting your general, which you can just, you know, I go through all the different sections of the FCC test and try to break it down in my own way. So let me break down a little bit what the restrictions are kind of as a technician. HF is possible, but it has its issues, right? Without too much science or stuff going on here, the sun has an 11-year cycle, right? Every 11 years, the poles flip, I believe is the accurate term. At the midpoint of the 11-year cycle, the sunspot index is very high, meaning the sun is firing out a lot more radiation. That radiation hits our ionosphere, the different layers of our atmosphere, and at different points of the day, energizes that or creates ionization in that atmospheric layer. That allows us to bounce those high frequency waves. They're not big enough to completely go all the way through, so they get bent back to Earth and come back down. That's what allows us to kind of bounce our signal across the Earth. We are today in the lowest point of the 11-year cycle, which means that 10 meters, which is the technician band of privilege space, is kind of the worst right now. And that's just the way it works out. I didn't pick it. I didn't pick the way this to be 10 meters being the thing for technicians, but that's how it is. So the best thing you can do is get out of the 10 meter space, which is what you see here. As a technician, you've got 10 meters. You just have this portion right here, which is 28 megahertz to 28.5 megahertz. And that's it. That's your whole space. Whereas as general, you can go all the way up here. Plus, you have spaces on all these other bands. Now, note, everything with a pink circle or pink square is what technicians get. And everything you get is CW on most of the HF bands. For instance, 40 meters. Great band. Love 40 meters. CW only, right? And that's one of the more effective low solar cycle bands is 40 meters at night specifically. You can't use it. 10 meters, can't use it at night unless you're talking radio to radio and it's relatively close. So keep that in mind. Hopefully that gives you an incentive to upgrade to general or extra. Summits on the Air, really best made possible if you have your general. And I'll give a shout out to Morse code because I keep trying to learn that as well. Having that mobile in my car makes it a little bit easier. I can poke around with that. Morse code, for those that are watching this kind of as your first time and you're curious what it's all about, it's still extremely valuable to amateur radio operators. The bandwidth space of transmitting Morse code, the dits and the DAWs, right? It takes up a tinier space in that waveform if you were looking at a waveform or a waterfall. Tiny bandwidth. So you're getting more power out just in that tiny space than you would if you had to basically encode or embed, or what's the term I'm looking for? Encoder. Anyway, I'm thinking of the wrong term. I'm thinking about digital right now. You don't have, with voice, human voice, to get the most characteristics out of the voice, you need a much wider bandwidth, right? You're pushing out more information on that RF wave. So your voice goes less far than it does with CW. So keep that in mind. It's much easier. Yeah, modulation. There you go. That'll work. So it's a lot easier to pick out the dits and dahs, even if it's way down in the noise and they don't have a lot of power, than it is to do that with voice. Much harder to do that. For instance, Morse code, if you look at a lot of the really active activators, they are mainly all on CW. And you should see them rack up the contacts with CW. It's fast and furious. So getting into HF, here are my thoughts on that. I would recommend... Hold on. What was I saying here? Let me take a sip. All right. So starting out on HF. First, I'd seek recommendations if you can find them. There are a wealth of videos on the topic on getting into HF. A lot of YouTube creators that make videos on operating in HF, and they've got all kinds of great information on that. Virgo's sake, quitter about no-code extras. I'm not. Bob, I'm not. I don't have any problem with no-code extras. I'm not saying you have to learn CW. I'm just saying it has value. It has, for QRP, it's better than doing CW. It's more efficient. Anyway, those are my thoughts. So, thanks, Bob. I would recommend, though, take the feedback of clubs, Elmers, either in person, online, whatever they think. And I would read reviews online, and I would watch reviews, but question or consider the motives of the author. You know, why are they making the review? Like on EHAM, are they a fanboy of a particular band, or they're not a fan of this, that, or the other? Just keep that in mind when you read some of the reviews. Reviews are great, but sometimes you got to make sure you understand what are the motivations. So for a first radio, what did I do? I bought a QRP radio, a portable QRP radio. I wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't recommend doing what I did. I would go with a 100-watt base station radio. I would focus on something that has knobs, has stuff on the screen that you can activate, turn on, and turn off, and doesn't have a deep menu system that you have to kind of keep the manual by if you step away from it for a couple of days and come back. I won't mention any radios, but there's one that's in my head right now as I think about a radio with a deep menu system. I'm sure some of you are going to type it in the comments. Look for something that has controls, a big chunky VFO, something you like to put your hands on, and it's okay if it's used. It's okay if it's used. They work just as great. A lot of used stuff, particularly stuff that's owned by amateur ham radio operators that are in clubs or maybe in your club, generally well taken care of, well loved. Go with that. That's what I would recommend. Now, if you can, it's a bit of a price jump. It's kind of expensive, but waterfalls, seeing the screen, the waterfall, like we just saw with Connor back on the Discord slide, waterfalls make understanding what's happening on the air much easier. You can see it, and you can go, oh, I want to go right there, and there's your radio, moves right over to it, and you can listen. So if you can, it's going to get easier as the used market starts to move on and the 7300s get a little bit older, but getting something with a waterfall is great. And man, my big thing, if a radio has an internal sound card, that is a big thumbs up. For instance, I learned the ICOM 7200 has an internal sound card. A lot of those are showing up in the used market. Keep an eye on those. And last, don't skimp on your antenna. Really take the time to think about what kind of antenna you want to put up. Consult others, look and watch review videos online or build videos. Understand what goes into a particular antenna, why you might want this type of antenna or another type, why you might want a vertical versus a dipole, why certain antennas like a loop has what's called high Q, meaning the space that's effective is pretty narrow on those portable loops. You may not want that. You may not want to be fiddling around with that all the time. So that starts to add up. I always say, like with ham radio, put up another $100 because it seems like every solution to a problem is pay another 100, pay another 100, pay another 100 for HF. Unless you really take the time up front to understand what the issues are going to be or what the realities are when you put that antenna on the air. So don't skip on your antenna. Should be, if not the first thing, the second thing you think about. So I'll mention HF antennas more than I already have in a couple of slides here. So I live in a small single family home. I don't have a lot of land, so for me, I end up with what's called compromise antennas, or antennas that require placement restrictions or can work when there's not ideal land to put underneath it. These are compromises in both my placement and in the size and the cost. Those all become factors. So do you live in an apartment? Are you going to be trying to activate off of balcony? Do you live in an HOA, like the live stream I did like last week or 2 weeks ago on HOA antennas? It's got to be camouflaged. I got to hide it. Those are compromised antennas. Those are antennas that are going to work, but they're not going to work as great as like the multi-$1,000, tens of $1,000s in some cases when you factor the tower, contest stations, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. My recommendation is aim to build would be preferred if you can, or buy a resonant antenna for your desired bands. So are you getting your general? Think about 40 and 20, or 40, 30, and 20 if you like digital or thinking about Morse code. And sometimes building a dipole is the best option. They're cheap, they're easy to make, and you can get a lot of satisfaction from making something yourself. And if you want to cut one for 20 and you say I want to experience 40, well, just make some more legs and make a fan dipole out of it. Add that onto the end. And one more thing on antennas. There can be, and I don't know where the term comes from. I think most of the time we use it, it's for funsies. But a lot of time we say, oh, RF is magic, or this, blah, blah, blah. That's not the case. Like, antennas are well understood. There are a wealth of information. Obviously, this is a pretty high-level video, so I'm not going to go into all those details. But there's a wealth of information you can find. There's books online you can get. There are tons of websites, a lot of like blogs where people go and you can get the books themselves, or they break down the information on explaining how they work. Always take your time and research that a little bit more. Antennas can be a heady topic in understanding, and it's where a lot of people focus their energy on when they get into HF. So don't worry about it if you don't understand the terms up front. I always recommend, if you don't really get what's happening, just focus on the dipole. Focus on understanding what that is, get it up in the air, and use it and try to operate. Getting on the air is the most important thing, and a dipole will get you there pretty quickly, so keep that in mind. And I think this is like the last slide. So the value of software-defined radios. Our world, software-defined radios are going to make things a lot more interesting as we start getting more power for relatively the same amount of money. Anyway, I recommend picking up an SDR. I happen to I will grab it. I don't know why I put it away. But my big recommendation are these SDR Play SDR devices. They will work on VHF, UHF, and HF, and they'll go higher than UHF too. These guys are great. In fact, that's the screenshot you see right there. And going back to what I said earlier about waterfalls, well, look what's happening here. Look where those green arrows are. The green arrow all the way to what you're probably seeing is your left. That's the CW band. That's either the Morse code contest that was going on, or it might have been the RTTY, a RTTY contest, but that's all this right here. That actually looks like CW, Morse code. Here, the second one, that's FT8, that digital mode that a lot of people are playing with, right, that I've done videos on. That's all FT8. That's 15 seconds, basically, of people transmitting, a pause, and then the next 15 seconds. You can tell just from looking at it. And then over here, that's a big loud signal that's coming into me on voice, single sideband voice, right? And then you got a couple more that are scattered throughout here. But wow, that's so easy. I just got a whole snapshot of what's going on the 40-meter band just by seeing that image. I knew exactly where all the content was that I want to go monitor. So big fan of SDRs. You can get them cheaply, SDR receivers specifically. I believe, I could be wrong, but HRO was doing an online special. If you go on their Twitter page, you can get that one for under $100, which is a good deal. And you don't need a lot of antenna to do that. A long wire will do it. All right, so now is the best time to be a ham. So let's get on the air. That, I believe, is my talk. And those are my pertinent links, which you've obviously found me, so congratulations. Link is in the description for Facebook and Discord. Any questions? So I will take questions on the chat room, but likely I'm going to just hop over to Discord because this was a long talk. So I will be looking at the chat right now. But just wanted to say thanks, everybody, for tuning in, man. Discord's the way we'll do the questions. So if you're interested in asking questions, make sure to join the Discord this week. No call-in because we've already been going long. And, yeah, anyway. Thank you, Rob. Rob says, great show. Appreciate that. Is this not updating? It may not be updating. James Hart says, I may be joining the contest tomorrow. Yeah, that's the ARRL sweepstakes. So very good. In a few years, the cycle will be fully flipped. Bob asks, what is a good HF radio for digital modes? Why the Icom 7300? It's so hard for me not to recommend that radio. It's just so difficult. Like, straight up, all you do is plug a USB cable into your computer, into the back of the radio, and that's it. Pretty much. There's a little bit more. I'm kidding. But it is the easiest radio I've ever used for getting on digital. Oh, man. Ethan saw a 7300 for $750 on QRZ, which QRZ has a sale page of ham selling ham gear. So, yeah. Let's see. James Hannibal asks, when do your Discord giveaways go live? That is a great question, James. James is the owner of Quirky QRP Antennas. Reminder, Quirky QRP HRCC coupon code if you go to Quirky QRP online. I believe the link is in the description, but if it's not, it'll get all updated. I will be posting the giveaways for next week's show, next Friday. I'll be posting that on Discord likely tomorrow or Sunday. That way you can get in on the contest really quickly. All you do is go to the giveaways and click the little horn and you're in. And oh man, there's going to be a lot of them. So just join the Discord. Trust me. Oh man, Single Cab Steve must be following my wife on Instagram. Can't buy HF radio because no spend November. My wife is pushing that real hard this year. And yeah, that 7300 is gone for sure. All right. I will power supply. So JD Williamson asks power supply recommendations. Yes. The MFJ 4230DMP. That thing is awesome. It's quiet. It's a switching power supply. It's light and tiny. You know, people say a lot of things about MFJ. I don't agree. I like the company. I like a lot of the stuff they do. Some stuff can be quirky, but I think that's why it's designed that way. But their power supplies are good. I've always liked them. So yeah, okay. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna do this Patreon shout out for all my patrons. I really appreciate the support, and I will be posting the slides to Patreon. The link is in the description for that as well. So if you're interested, you can jump over there and get in on that action to get these slides and the links that are posted there, like WebSDR and some other stuff like that. So big thank you to Chris Ebert, Kerry Blackwell, Jason Brown, Jason Siebert, David Dansero, Danny Miller, Wesley Magyar, Barbara Schrock, Will Ladd, Franklin Lewis, Brad Snyder, Dennis Dunderdale, Garrett Larson, Jonathan Franson, 86DM Dennis, who I saw in the chat. I think I saw the Wyoming Ham too, the Wyoming Ham. Randall Hensley, Evan Hartman, who's definitely in the chat. Dennis Mickelson, George Gaini, Andy, Kenny Miyamoto, Ron Thorson, Ken Hall, Corey Vuelta, Mr. Mode, David Mays, Devin B. Hedge, Mark Chase, Raymond Cracker, Geraldo Kelso, Rob K8BCR, Lee Harrell, Michael Kearney, Steve Barker, Mark Fields, Corey Sheldon, Brad Nadow, Stephen Hunt, Brian Nosowitz, Connor Carroll, Mark Marusin, Mike Heerly, and Harald Carpenter, and the Brew Crew, which the brew of the day is White Claw. I didn't even get through this one because there was so many slides. And then wrapping up the back end here, the final stretch, Ian Webb, Sean Bales, James Barrett, Dragetivith, I think it's Dragetivith. I think that's right. Excuse me. Chad Newton, Rob Zarge, John Molnar, Stephen Hunter, Justin Rao, Stephen Carduz, Brian Fairbanks, Richard Smith, Hercules, KC1LZR, I love that, Mike Zarrett, and John Flowers. All right, guys, I am heading over to Discord after probably taking a potty break, and then I will see you guys over there. So hope you join me. You guys have a great rest of your weekend. I've got some videos coming out. Oh, man. Lots of fun stuff is happening. Anyway, we'll be working on something on the after chat. So hopefully you check that out. Join the Discord because that's where I'll post the link to the Twitch after stream so you can watch there and you can get your questions live. All right, everybody, take it easy.